There is no place that God is not. Remind yourself of this every day. It has been said that God sleeps in the minerals, rests in the vegetables, walks in the animals, and thinks in us. Think of God as a presence rather than a person, a presence that allows a seed to sprout, that moves the stars across the sky, and simultaneously moves a thought across your mind. A presence that grows the grass and grows your fingernails all at the same time. This presence is everywhere, therefore it must also be in you. And if it's everywhere, it must be in all that you perceive to be missing from your life. In some inexplicable way, you're already connected to all that you'd like to attract into your life by the presence of this universal, all-powerful spirit called God. You may have read about some of the great saints in India. They seem to possess the magical powers of instant manifestation. Their presence appears to heal the sick, and they communicate a sense of divine bliss and peace to all those that they encounter. One saint was asked by a reporter from the West, "Are you God?" The saint responded without hesitation, "Yes, I am," to which everyone in attendance seemed stunned. Then after a brief pause, he continued, "And so are you. The only difference between you and I," he said, "is that I know it, and you doubt it." You are a divine creation of God. You can never be separate from that which created you. If you can think of God as the ocean and yourself as a container, you may find it helpful in moments of doubt, or when you feel lost or alone, to remember that you are a container of God. When you dip your glass into the ocean, what you have is a glass of God. It's not as big or as strong, but it's still God. As long as you refuse to believe otherwise, you won't feel separate from God. Think of a drop of water from the ocean of abundance that's separated from its source. Separated from its source, that droplet of water will ultimately evaporate and return to its source. The point is that while it's in its liquid form, disconnected from its source, it loses the power of its source. This is the essence of the secret of always treasuring your divinity. While you're separated in your mind from your source, you lose your divine power, the power of your source. Just like the drop of water, you too will change form and ultimately return to your source. As long as you feel disconnected from God, you lose the power of your source, which is the unlimited power to create, to be miraculous, and to experience the joy of being alive. The drop of water disconnected from its divine source symbolizes your ego. What is your ego? Your ego is nothing more than an idea that you carry around with you everywhere you go. This idea tells you that you are the sum total of what you have, or what you do, and who you are. Ego insists that you are a separate being, that your personality and your body are your essence, and that you are in competition with every other ego to get your share of the pie, which is limited and finite. Therefore, ego asserts you must be wary of others who also want all that they feel they're entitled to. Consequently, ego leads you to believe that there are enemies to be wary of at all times. Since you're separate from them, you must disdain cooperating with them for fear of being cheated. The result is that you have to distrust everyone. Your ego also tells you that you're separate from everything that's missing in your life, and so you must spend a great deal of energy chasing after what's missing. Moreover, because who you are, according to ego, is your body and your personality, you're separate from God. God is outside of you, a force to fear, just like all of those external forces attempting to control you. So you beg this external force to provide you with special powers to overcome all of those other egos who are trying so hard to snare what is rightfully yours. Your ego keeps you in a constant state of fear, worry, anxiety, and stress. It implores you to be better than everyone around you. It beseeches you to push harder and to get God on your side. In short, it maintains your separate status from God and allows you to be terrified of your own divinity. You are a piece of God. You are a divine creation, a being of light who showed up here as a human being in the exact moment you were supposed to. Your body will depart at precisely the right moment as well. But you're not that body you behold, nor are you its personality or any of its possessions and accomplishments. You are the beloved, a miracle, a part of the eternal perfection, a piece of the divine intelligence that supports everything and everyone on this planet. In a world in which this divine intelligence creates everything, there can be no accidents. Every time you experience fear, self-rejection, anxiety, guilt, or hate, you're denying your divinity and succumbing to the influences of that insidious ego mind that has convinced you of your disconnection to God. Author U.S. Anderson wrote an inspiring book many years ago called 3 Magic Words. Mr. Anderson writes about the ability to become a miracle worker and to live up to the ideal of the promise made by Jesus Christ. Even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things. The author doesn't reveal what the 3 magic words are until the end of the book, when the reader discovers that the words are, "You are God." Not God in the sense of above all others and better than everyone else, but in the sense of being eternally connected to your source, the ever-present power of love that never abandons you and never runs dry. You can rely on this source if you remind yourself that it includes you at all times. He presents this in Power versus Force. That seems to bring it all home very clearly. Let's attempt to understand all of this through an example. Imagine a bum on a street corner in a fashionable neighborhood. Can you get a picture of that? Bum, street corner, fashionable neighborhood. In a fashionable neighborhood in a big city stands an old man in tattered clothes, alone, leaning against the corner of an elegant brownstone. Look at him from the perspective of various levels of consciousness and note the differences in how he appears. From the bottom of the scale, at a level of 20, the level of shame, this bum is dirty, disgusting, and disgraceful. And that's how you view him, and you know people who do. And you may know yourself as having done that at one time. From the level of 30, which is guilt, he would be blamed for his condition. He deserves what he gets. He's probably a lazy welfare cheat. At 50, hopelessness, his plight would appear desperate, damning evidence that society can't do anything about homelessness. At 75, grief, the old man looks tragic, friendless, and forlorn. At a consciousness level of 100, fear, we might see him as threatening, a social menace. Perhaps we could call the police before he commits some crime. At 125, desire, he might represent a frustrating problem. Why doesn't somebody do something? At 150, anger, the old man might look like he could be violent. Or on the other hand, you might become furious that such conditions exist in the first place. At 175, we're still at levels that still weaken you. Pride. He could be seen as an embarrassment or as lacking the self-respect to better himself. And at 200, courage, now we're at the distinction between truth and falsehood and that which empowers rather than weakens. We're at power rather than force. At 200, we might be motivated to wonder if there's a local homeless shelter. All he needs is a job and a place to live. At 250, neutrality, the bum looks okay. Maybe even interesting. Live and let live, we might say. After all, he's not hurting anyone. At 310, willingness, we might decide to go down and see what we can do to cheer this fellow up. Or volunteer some time, perhaps, at a local mission. At 350, acceptance, the man on the corner appears intriguing. He probably has an interesting story to tell. He's where he is for reasons we may never understand. At 400, reason, he's a symptom of the current economic and social malaise, or perhaps a good subject for in-depth psychological study. Now we move to the higher levels. At the higher levels, the old man begins to look not only interesting, but friendly, then lovable. Perhaps we would then be able to see that he was, in fact, one who had transcended social limits and gone free. Maybe a joyful old guy with the wisdom of age in his face and the serenity that comes from indifference to material things. At 600, peace, the highest level any of us will ever attain here. He is revealed as one's own self in a temporary condition. Can you see the difference? Can you see the distinctions between how we look at things? A simple bum standing on a corner and all of the attendant ways that we have of processing it.
some of which will weaken us individually and collectively, and some of which will empower us individually and collectively.
You may never have thought of yourself as a person who has genius residing within you. You may have thought that genius is a word reserved for the Mozarts, Michelangelos, Einsteins, Madame Curies, Virginia Woolfs, Stephen Hawkings, and others whose lives and accomplishment have been publicized. But keep in mind that they share the same essence of consciousness that you do. They emanated from the same power of intention as you did. They have all shared the same life force animating them as you do. Your genius is in your very existence, awaiting the right circumstances to express itself. There is no such thing as luck or accidents in this purposeful universe. Not only is everything connected to everything else, but no one is excluded from the universal source called intention. And genius, since it's a characteristic of the universal source, must be universal, which means that it's in no way restricted. It's available to every single human being. It certainly can and does show up differently in every single one of us. The qualities of creativity and genius are within you, waiting your decision to match up with that power of intention. Changing your energy level to access the genius within you. Higher energy is the energy of light, which is a way of describing spiritual energy. The 7 phases of intention are the ingredients of this spiritual energy. When you shift your thoughts, emotions, and life activities into these realms and deactivate the lower energies of the ego, the God force within you begins to take over. It's so automatic that it travels faster than your thoughts. This is why your thoughts about how you did it are so bewildering. The higher energy level actually transcends thought, moving into vibrational harmony with the source energy of intention. As you release ego-dominated thoughts, which convince you that you're doing these amazing things and you are responsible for these unbelievable accomplishments, then you begin to tap into the power of intention. This is where the genius that you truly are resides. I'd like you to consider what may seem like a radical idea. Genius can show up in as many ways as there are human beings. Anything in any field that anyone has ever accomplished is shared by you. You're connected to every being that has ever lived or ever will live, and you share the same exact energy of intention that flowed through Archimedes, Leonardo da Vinci, the Virgin Mother, and Jonas Salk. You can access this energy. At the deepest level, all things and all people are composed of vibrations organized into fields that permeate the entire structure of the universe. You share these vibrations, and you are in this field. The starting point is knowing and understanding that this level of creativity and functioning called genius resides within you. Then begin to deconstruct doubts about your role here. Make a commitment to raise your energy levels to vibrate harmoniously with the field of intention, despite attempts by your ego and other egos to dissuade you. Expanding your reality. Pay attention to yourself in ways that allow the expansion of the infinite possibilities that you're potentially capable of. You may decide, as I have, that repairing an automobile and surfing in the ocean aren't what you're going to enjoy doing. You leave these activities to others, and you use your genius to engage in pursuits that please and attract you. Expand your reality to the point where you pursue what you love doing and excel at it. Involve yourself in the high energy levels of trust, optimism, appreciation, reverence, joy, and love. That means love for what you're doing, love for yourself, and love for your genius, which allows you to immerse yourself in any activity and enjoy the process of experiencing it fully. Trusting your insights. The process of appreciating your genius involves trusting those inner flashes of creative insight as being worthy of expression. Never, but never regard any creative thought that you're having as anything other than a worthy potential expression of your inner genius. The only caveat here is that these thoughts must be in vibrational harmony with the 7 faces of intention. Inner thoughts of hatred, anger, fear, despair, and destruction simply don't foster creative insights. The low-energy, ego-dominated thoughts must be replaced and converted to the power of intention. Your creative impulses are real, they're vital, they're worthy, and they crave expression. The fact that you can conceive of them is proof of this. Your thoughts are real, they're pure energy, and they're telling you to pay attention and get that connecting link to the power of intention polished up through living at different levels than you've accepted as normal or ordinary. At these levels, everyone is a genius. Appreciating the genius in others. Every person you interact with should feel the inner glow that comes from being appreciated, particularly for the ways in which they express their creativity. A core theme which strengthens the flow of the power of intention is wanting for others as much as you intend for yourself. Appreciating the genius in others attracts high levels of competent energy to you. By seeing and celebrating the creative genius, you open a channel within yourself for receiving the creative energy from the field of intention. Human beings are multidimensional. We don't get that. We think we're just one-dimensional. Maybe two we'll get in. We don't see that there's 18, 20, 50, hundreds of dimensions that are all part of this transitional process called humanity. And that when you get this inside of you, that death is no longer anything to be terrified of. It's just you understand, you know, it isn't a belief, it isn't a faith, it isn't a religious thing. It's an understanding that you can't kill thought. And form never dies. It is always just in transition. And if you just ask yourself the question, am I a body with a soul, or am I a soul with a body? And if you know that you're a soul with a body, if you know that you aren't this body, and that you've been in many bodies already. You've been in this little body, and then in this 12-year-old body, and this 18-year-old body. You've been in all these bodies. When there's no form left to any of them, you take on a whole new approach to this terrifying thing called aging or dying. I had to address the Florida Council on the Aging last week. I was the keynote speaker. And I got up there and I said, and there were all of these people who work with aging people and all of these older people and so on. And I got up and my opening line was, "You've asked me to be the keynote speaker on a subject that I don't believe in. I don't believe in aging. You can't age thought. You can't age spirit. You can't age divinity. You can't age feeling. You can only age form." And I know that's not just me. And that's what this whole thing is about. That's really what we're talking about. Understanding that who you are, because you can't touch, feel, grab, and do all that stuff you can do with that pile of bones and gristle and veins and things like that. And because you can't get a hold of all of that, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, any more than the wind doesn't exist because you can't get a handful of it. No one has ever seen the wind. You can't see wind. You can't hold wind. You can't smell wind. You can't touch wind. You can only see the results of wind. That's all. You know that wind exists, but nobody's ever seen wind. How can you do that? So it exists independent of whether you can touch it or grab it or not. And as you get into this awakening process, this highest level that frees you from all of the stuff that immobilizes most people, all of the anguish, all the depression, all of the having to get ahead, all of the accumulation anxieties, all the type A behavior and the hurry sickness that we suffer from, that stuff becomes something in the past that is just thought. It's just there. And you'll never, ever be knocked around by it again. So thought is an endless energy that goes on and on. And if you know that that's who you are, this ability to think. And for the skeptics, I would suggest to you that what you do is you think about everything that's ever happened to you up until this moment and understand that all of it, up until right now, in this moment that you are alive, is in the realm of thought. You can't touch any of it. You can't have any of it. And yet it's very real for you. You can get very emotional about it. You can have experiences through that thought, but you can't ever have it. You can't ever touch it in the form sense. So that your whole experience of your past up until this very second is all in thought and nothing more, right? And yet it's very real. And then I would say to you that to think about everything that's going to happen to you from this second on and to understand that that's also nothing more than pure thought. You can't have any of that. You can't touch tomorrow. You can't get a hold of your goals. You can't have those and dissect them and treasure them. You can't take tomorrow's BMW and drive it. That's all just thought. And yet you can also have the experience within your form, within yourself, through thought. So your whole past and your whole future are a thought. So that only leaves you with now. Then what you do is you look at now and you look at all the things that are important to you, that you want for yourself. And you start with your children and your wife or your husband and your co-workers and your parents and all of these people. And you understand that the only way you can ever experience them in the moment is through thought. Through your mind. You can't do it any other way. You can't get behind their eyeballs and be them. That's the limitation of form. So you can only do that through thought. And then you take all of the stuff that you want to accumulate and you begin to see that that's only thought too. That's only thought. You can't be a diamond. You can't be a new house. You can't even have it. You can't even own it. It is only in your mind that you do something with it. And you can experience it, but you can't have it. Now you get to this place where you understand there are no limits on me.
because I can think anything I want. Now you're looking at new rules. New rules. Here are the rules. There are no such thing as cause and effect. Now, we live by cause and effect in form. You do this, and it causes this, and physical form is altered by this and that. But in thought, you don't have to have a cause and effect. In other words, if you're doing something in thought and you want to change the thought to something else, or if you're right now in Chicago but you want to be in Afghanistan, you just go there. You can go there and you don't have to get on a train, and you don't have to fly. You don't have to do any of that. In thought, you don't have to have cause and effect. That place of no limits is how you start looking at everyone and everything in the universe. And you begin to look at all the stuff that we get really hung up with owning, and you start saying to yourself, if it's in my life, it's fine, and if it's not, that's okay too. And you look at your relationships and you find out that almost everything you fight about, you're fighting about stuff that doesn't even exist, isn't even real for you. What's real is just how you think and what you fill yourself with. And if your thoughts are harmony and ease and serenity and love, and that's all you have to give away, then that's what you start giving away. You can be anything, you can do anything, you can go anywhere. I think of it like an actor on a stage. You sort of see your form going through these motions. Like, we produce a series of tapes, all right? So that's one of the motions that it goes through. In order to do that, we got to fly to Chicago. In order to do that, you got to drive through rainstorms. And you just sort of watch your form go through all of these things. But there's another part of you, the real divine part of you, the real you, that sort of just stands back like an actor on a stage and says, these are just emotions that I'm going through, but that isn't really me. I'm much more divine and much greater than all of that. I'm much bigger and grander than all of that. And you start seeing the perfection behind everything that you're doing. And you never worry again about your form wearing out or about dying or any of those things. They become meaningless.
In the Tao, it says that a victory in war is to be celebrated by mourning, because it still gives evidence that we have not found our divine nature. If you love those who love you, what virtue lies in that? Even the morally weak love those who love them. And if you're good to those who are good to you, what virtue lies in that? Even the morally weak do that. Love your enemies. Be good to them. Share with them without expecting anything in return. Then your reward will be rich, and you will be sons of the Most High. He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be compassionate like your Father. How much of that do we practice on our planet? Divine love is a love that we have inside of us because it's the only thing we have to give away. That's all we can give away. Again, Patanjali, when you are steadfast, this is who Jesus was. This is who Rumi was. This is who Shams of Tabriz was. This is who Muhammad was. This is who Buddha was. When you are steadfast, which means there's no ego, when you are steadfast in your abstention of thoughts of harm directed towards yourself and others, that all living creatures will cease to feel fear in your presence. That's who St. Francis was. I've been to Assisi. Some of you were there with me. How many? Who was there? Look, so many of you were there with us last year, just a year ago, a little over a year ago. Do you remember the lecture in Assisi? When I stood there and St. Francis just entered my body, and literally I just lost it. I couldn't speak for 7-8 minutes. It was overwhelming, the love. And everyone in the room just stood up and just held their hands out. You can reach this level of consciousness. There's a great Indian poet. His name was Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore. In 1927, he wrote a collection of poetry called the Gitanjali. This is what he said about the ego. I went out alone on my way to my tryst. But who is this me in the dark? I step aside to avoid his presence, but I escape him not. He makes the dust rise from the earth with his swagger. He adds his loud voice to every word I utter. He is my own little self, my Lord. He knows no shame. But I am ashamed to come to thy door in his company. That's the ego. That's the part of us that we have to transcend. That's where we have to go within and recognize who we truly are. And who we are is divine love. When Jesus was asked, who is God? He said, God is love. And he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in me, and I in him. It's just love. That's all Rumi is about. It's about love. It's about love for the beloved, love for the divine, love for that place within us that is our excitement. It is our God. It's what God is. Whatever excites you is the part of you that is saying, this is my Dharma, this is what I'm here for. And you know what it's always about? It's always about serving. The miser who loves his gold gets no love from the gold. There's no love in gold. The reason the miser is so exquisitely happy with his gold is because of the outpouring of love that he has for it. That's what he feels. When you feel so good about your Mercedes, or you feel so good about this ship, or you feel so good about your great paintings, as I read to you at the beginning of today, the Chinese versus the Byzantines. When you feel so great about these great accomplishments and all that you have, and all that you own, and all that you've defeated, and all the wins that you've had, it's nothing to do with any of that stuff external to you. It's the outpouring of love that you are giving to it. And you can't have love in your life, and you can't give it away unless that's what you have inside.
So look at the energy of your life. The energy of the foods that we eat, the shows that we watch, the places that you accumulate, the friends that you have, the people that find fault with what you're doing. Look at all of the way, even a simple little thing like feng shui, which is a Chinese form of how you arrange the furniture in your. It's so cool. But I've got a lady who works with me over in Maui, and every time I go away, she'll come back and she'll have this thing moved over here and this thing over there, and I'll say, but I like this here. This is where I shave. No. The feng shui of that isn't quite right, and you don't want to have a red next to you. I just listen to her. My place is one of the most pleasant and beautiful places. Of course, having it on the ocean has a lot to do with it as well. But I believe that energy is in everything. Change the energy of your life and reconnect to the energy of spirit. Spiritual energy is healing energy. And also the way that we talk to ourselves. How do you talk to yourself? If you think, here's one of my favorite quotes, the creative source in your life. Here it is right here, this creative source. This source reacts to your belief in shortages with a fulfillment of your belief. If you believe there's shortages out there and you can't attract them into your life, now this is a source that is unlimited abundance. It just is a constant state of creating. It's always creating, okay? So it doesn't know anything about shortages. If you come to this source with a belief that there are shortages in terms of your life, it will fulfill your belief. If you believe that you can't be healed, that it's just impossible for you to be healed, if you believe you can't be happy, if you believe that you have to be miserable, if you believe that you can't attract the right person, if you've got something that you want to fund, some project that you want to fund, and you can't get it funded, and you come to this source with a belief in shortages, it will fulfill your belief. It only knows how to be. Remember what I said earlier. You are at one with this, and you are also at one with all of its principles. And you have to contemplate yourself as connected to, in harmony with, in rapport with this. It's like what I'm asking you to do in this program. I'm asking you to see yourself at every moment of your life when you're having a thought, when things aren't working, when you're not feeling well, when the right people aren't there. You could say something to yourself. I heard people say this, I tell people always, think from the end. Think from the end. So I was talking to a man one day down where I work out in the gym, and I said to him, he's been sick, he's got nose running, he's got, Snoopy's running out of his nose, he's got, it's disgusting. And, I said, how long have you been sick, Marty? You will never believe this answer. He said, in 3 weeks, it'll be a month. What kind of thinking is that? And if it doesn't work out for some reason, I don't use blame, I don't get anger, I just simply say to myself, this is the way it is supposed to be, and I'm at peace with it. I choose to be at peace because this is peace. You want to watch the resistance. What kind of self-talk do we have? If you think about what is missing in your life, and you talk to other people about what is missing in your life, and you share a lot with what's missing in your life. I'm missing the right person. My soulmate has never showed up, I'm missing the money, I don't have them. And you talk about all the things that are missing in your life. Here's your connection to Source. Remember, you're always connected. The question is, are you ready to stop living at ordinary levels of consciousness? Are you willing to live at a spiritual level of consciousness in which you are in rapport with that which provides everything? So if you're thinking about what's missing, and you go to this universal source, asking to have fixed what is missing in your life, you'll have your belief in what's missing continue to be refocused for you. In the Old Testament it says, as a man thinketh, so is he. If you think about what is missing, don't be surprised if you keep attracting what's missing into your life. If you think about what always has been, then don't be surprised if what always has been is what keeps showing up in your life. Because thoughts are energy. And the thought of it's always been this way and there's nothing I can do, resistance. What emotion am I feeling? Frustration. I want to change that. What is my guidance system? I'm going to see how in harmony am I with this energy of Source, with the energy of intention. How in harmony with it am I? The source of all doesn't know anything about things being missing. There's nothing missing in this universal source. And you emanated from that. You are a piece of that. If you're always thinking about what they want for you, and there's no shortage of them, they're called relatives. I'm going to write a book someday that's going to be called Your Friends Are God's Way of Apologizing for Your Relatives. Why? Because, by the way, I gave this same talk to your relatives and they applauded even louder. Okay? Because a friend is someone before whom you can think aloud. A friend is not someone who makes demands on you and tells you what you should be doing or what you shouldn't be doing. There are very often, because we believe that we're related to people, we have talk, and then what happens with us is that we start talking to other people about what they want for us. And we despise what they want for us. We get angry at them for even wanting that for us, and then we get surprised when what they want for us keeps showing up. See, self-actualizing people, Abraham Maslow once said, the difference between self-actualizing people, the highest functioning people, and everybody else is that self-actualizing people must be what they can be. Self-actualizing people must be what they can be. What can you be? What can you be?
I hope it is as obvious to you as it is to me that the collective ego will benefit when we transcend our individual egos. You, as a single individual, have a sacred quest. That quest involves coming to your higher spiritual nature and inviting it to show you the way of the sacred self in your daily life. This means denying the demands of your ego if those demands contradict the guidance of your higher self. Our world is a collection of individuals urged on by the loving presence within all of us to achieve the sacred quest personally and collectively. The world will become a peaceful, fulfilled, cooperative, loving, truthful, tolerant, and pure environment as the individual parts that make up the collective consciousness restrain their egos. As is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. The whole behaves precisely as does its individual parts. Many people I speak to tell me that they feel powerless to affect the global community. They believe that, given the scope of the world's problems, their efforts are so infinitesimal as to be insignificant. They simply are not seeing that it is precisely through a change in individual consciousness that the world will be transformed. All of the problems that we face as a group reflect those we have individually. The world is encountering a spiritual deficit that reflects our need to consciously get on the path of our sacred quest. The solution to individual and global problems is to overcome the spiritual deficit. When you make the shift in consciousness, allowing yourself to be an agent of heightened awareness, you are contributing to the transformation of our world. You are not separate from the other souls on this planet. You share the identical energy that embodies the souls of Rwanda and Pakistan, for example. You are the lamp, and God is the electricity. It flows through you as surely as it flows through all living things. When you make the decision to choose the guidance of your higher self over your false self, you have plugged into the divine inner energy. When you run your life based on the principles of the higher self, you are contributing to the transformation of the entire world. You must strengthen your will to choose the sacred path when your ego calls you a fool for believing there could ever be a world without war. If your ego can convince you, you will become part of the collective ego's falseness. Individuals who choose ego propaganda are individuals who will build more bombs and manufacture more weapons. Currently, there are some 6 billion people on the planet. About 3 million are at war or in skirmishes that cause them to kill and torture each other. But that means that there are 5,997,000,000 who are not at war. This is a hopeful statistic, which our egos do not want us to consider. By contrast, the collective ego strives to keep the populace nervously on the edge with reminders to view the world in terms of us versus them. This ego viewpoint not only reinforces the insane escalation of ways to kill each other, but is also responsible for most of our social problems. The world ego is our false self, and this is the primary characteristic that we need to recognize. We want to believe that we are our physical bodies, and that the territories we occupy are so important that we are willing to kill each other in order to maintain those boundary lines. We have become convinced that our true identities are located in tribal ancestries, traditions, histories, genealogies, and the color and shape of our bodies. We have lost sight of our authentic identities because of the labels that our egos have assigned to us. Our egos have coalesced into a worldwide false perception of ourselves based on an unwillingness to know our true spiritual nature. Although all of our spiritual leaders have reminded us of our divinity and implored and even commanded us to love one another, the world ego has won this battle and produced ancient enmities and uncountable horrors in the long history of humanity. As you travel the path of your sacred quest, you will help to dispel the absurdity of specialness that the ego so assiduously promotes. You will see an end to this kind of thinking in your life and on a worldwide scale as well. The higher part of ourselves that I have talked about on this tape reacts to a vision that is infinite. This is assuredly not the vision of the ego. The ego is just as cowardly on a collective scale as it is on an individual basis. The world ego is frightened of a mass appeal to overcome our spiritual deficit. When people face inward and embrace a more loving perspective, the power of the sacred self will create change not only in the community but in the entire world as well. The world ego will do all that it can to prevent this kind of inner approach. It will ridicule those who promote meditation, peaceful demonstrations, and the love of God as a way out of the morass of social evils. It is just as true on the collective level as it is on the individual plane. The higher self urges you to simplify and to avoid contributing to anything that hurts others or increases the separation from your spiritual source.
When Madame Blavatsky talked about who the leaders of the spiritual revolution would be, she said that these leaders will be Ordinary people. Regular, everyday folks. School teachers, musicians, artists, cab drivers, regular folks. And these people will speak out with a voice. And this voice will be heard. And then the bureaucracies will fall in line and begin to reflect what it is that this consciousness is instituting in our people. And if you look at the people who have been instrumental in changing consciousness in the last 25 years, you look at the people whose programs you listen to through Nightingale Congress and ask what are their backgrounds. You find out that they're salesmen. Marianne Williamson was a singer, a nightclub singer. Louise Hay was a dancer. Dennis Waitley was a salesman. Zig Ziglar was a preacher. People who just did everyday, regular things. I was a school teacher. And somehow there's a power, there's a pressure, there's something that has come and put us in a position of just talking about this kind of shift, this kind of consciousness.
Mindfulness just is, here's one of the Thich Nhat Hanh's quotes. He says, "Walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet." It's a practice of putting your mind and your consciousness onto exactly where you are in the moment and being able to find beauty. It's one of the great teachings that I learned as a young man is that looking at beauty in the world is the very first step in purifying the mind. To be able to find beauty. I remember the story I told of Viktor Frankl when I was with him in 1978 on a panel in Vienna. The great Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and he said that they would give. We had lunch after that, just the two of us. I was very, very touched, and it was one of the most memorable moments of my life. And he said to me, when we were given a bowl of dirty water with a floating fish head in it, and that was our protein for the day. And he said you had to be able to find a way to find beauty in that. He said when we're challenged with circumstances over which we have absolutely no control, that we're challenged to change ourselves. And instead of looking at this as poor me and this shouldn't be happening and isn't this awful, but looking at it in terms of this is where I am. This is where I am in here, in this moment. And in this moment, I'm going to find beauty in this and be in a state of appreciation for this fish, for it's giving its life to me. It's allowing me to survive and so on. And he said the people, he told me, and I'll never forget this, he said the people in the concentration camps, this was in Auschwitz, in Poland, he said the people who couldn't find beauty in the circumstances that they were in, the horrible circumstances that they were in, he said they would always perish. He said, you've got to be able to see beauty. The famous line from John Keats in Ode on a Grecian Urn, beauty is truth, and truth is beauty. That's all you need to know on earth. That's all you know on earth, and all you need to know. And so that this ability, and that's what mindfulness is. It's walking on the earth and kissing the ground with your feet with each step that you take and becoming aware of it. He talks frequently about being able to find beauty in just drying a dish. Yeah, a lot of people sit down, and while they're while they're sitting down for a meal, they're already thinking about what they're going to have for dessert, and instead of just being there in this moment. If this is the appetizer and this is the bite that I'm taking, and this is what I'm tasting in this moment, and to find beauty in virtually everything that there is in you. It's this way of making the mind pure.
Every beauty which is seen here below, down here below, by persons of perception resembles more than anything else that celestial source from which we all come. Isn't that great? Every beauty that we see resembles more than anything else that source. We're talking about source, connecting to source, from which we all come. Do you see beauty? Do you see it more or less in your life? Can you find it in a homeless person urinating on the street? Can you find beauty in a cockroach? As you reach higher levels of consciousness, you begin to see, not only do you see beauty everywhere and in everything, you begin to recognize it as truth.
And, you can look around, whoever you are, listening, wherever you are on this planet right now, look out your window, or look to your right, or look to your left, wherever you are, in a little room someplace, or sitting on a beach somewhere, or driving in your car, or whatever it may be, and just look around. What I want to say to all of you is that, the very first step in purifying your mind and moving into higher levels of consciousness and recognizing the eternal, infinite consciousness that you are, is to look at beauty in the world and see it in as many places as you can. And if you're a writer, you write a poem about it. I mean, there's 3 or 4 poems in there right now that and if I were if Rumi were here listening, and maybe he is, maybe that was Rumi, because I have such a love affair with his poetry. Maybe it was Rumi walking across my balcony on the railing, saying, "Find beauty in me." Just one of the strangest experiences that I've had, and that all came from Thich Nhat Hanh. And since we had that experience, and since I was reading him this week, I've been finding beauty in everything, in every little bird that flies by, and every person that's out there, and every wave that shows up, and so on. Do I pray as if my prayers are already realized? The traditional means of prayer that I was exposed to throughout my life involved asking for something and hoping that an external God would provide me with the answers for my wishes. A close friend and colleague of mine, Greg Braden, who is also a student and admirer of Neville, writes in his penetrating book, The Isaiah Effect, "Rather than asking that the outcome of our prayer come to pass, we acknowledge our role as an active part of creation and give thanks for what we are certain that we have created. Whether we see immediate results or not, our thanks acknowledge that somewhere in creation our prayer has already been fulfilled." Unquote. This may appear to contradict the ask and you shall receive version of prayer that you are likely exposed to. It may feel new, but it is so important that you acknowledge your own divine role in the fulfillment of your spiritually aligned desires for yourself and others. A vision is within your imagination as you enter into your sacred practice of prayer, one that is so strong you can already feel its fulfillment in your own body. To once again quote Neville, quote, "The moment you accept the wish as an accomplished fact, the subconscious finds means for its realization. To pray successfully, then, you must yield to the wish, that is, feel the wish fulfilled." Unquote. Being a piece of God, and therefore altogether God, as a part of the entire process of creation, you become an active participant in your own private prayerful moments. Consider shutting out your senses completely, along with all of the evidence they continually place before you, because you are, in your prayers, going to attempt to feel what they, that is, your senses, will most assuredly deny. Perhaps describing what I do will help you. When I pray, I always yield to the wish that I have for myself, my loved ones, and the entire planet, and all of its inhabitants, rather than attempting to force my wish or to have God take over and do my bidding for me. In my mind, I see my wishes as accomplished, and I experience what that feels like, savoring the feeling in my body. I stay in a profound state of gratitude. My prayer is without effort. Rather, it is felt as an already accomplished fact. I then act as if what it is I am praying for is my truth, even if my senses and all those about me give evidence to the contrary. I'm not asking for special favors because I do not believe in an ego-constructed deity who plays favorites, or who has the ability to heal everyone, yet withholds these favors because he or she is looking for something from me. I'm a part of the entire business of creation. I am divine consciousness, and I never forget it. I know I have the capacity to make conscious contact with my source of creation. There's no fear of insulting a mythical God. In the I Am Discourses, Saint Germain says, quote, I say to the students in all sincerity, there is no possible way of attaining a quality or a desired attribute without claiming it, unquote. With this in mind, I claim peace, health, happiness, joy, prosperity for everyone I know in my life. I claim peace and contentment for myself, for humanity, and the entire world. In my prayers, I give thanks for my mysterious role in all of this, and I reprogram my subconscious mind so I feel this in my body. I leave my sacred prayer time and go about the activities of my life, whatever they may be, with this feeling within me. I am not discouraged by what my senses might be reporting. I have left all ideas of time and timing behind, and I trust in the I Am presence that is my true identity. Often at night I engage in prayerful visualization. I visualize faces of people I know who have crossed over and left the outer world, people I've seen in the media but have never met, and people I knew as a child. I surround them with love. I see the love, and I feel it for them and myself. I am calling in the I Am presence. As the I Am Discourses teach, quote, the undesirable moves out, and the I Am presence moves in, and you find that you have truly entered into a new world, filled with the happiness and perfection you have always known existed somewhere within your own heart, unquote. This is prayer to me, and when I emerge from these moments of prayer, it's as if I've attended a movie and seen the successful end of the film, even though I may not have been shown precisely how that ending was achieved. This is not only the great power of prayer, it is also the power of a wishes-fulfilled life. No ego, no force, no special privileges, simply an awareness of the power that exists within us when we assume that what we pray for, always aligned with our highest selves, is a completed fact. We are, each and every one of us, a participant in this dance of creation.
What I call authentic prayer is inviting divine desire to express itself through myself. It expresses my experience of oneness with the divine energy. This may sound like a radical or even blasphemous notion, but is the source of all spiritual traditions. Here's a few examples. In Christianity, they say the kingdom of heaven is within you. In Islam, they say those who know themselves know their God. In Buddhism, they say, look within, you are the Buddha. In Vedanta, they say, Atman, or individual consciousness, and Brahman, universal consciousness, are one. Yoga says God dwells within you as you. Confucianism, heaven, earth, and human are of one body. And in the Upanishads, the ancient texts of the Hindus, by understanding the self, all this universe is known. Trust, then, is the cornerstone of my praying, and with it comes the peace that is the essence of manifesting.